What's up, witches? Thanks for tuning in to our latest episode at TheRavensBrew. We're your hosts. I'm Summer, and that's Molly, and we're here to stir things up. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in Fayetteville, West Virginia. And while families across America were celebrating, the Sauter family's home went up in flames. By morning, 5 of their children were missing, their bodies never found, and a haunting question lingered. Did they die in the fire or not?
The Sodder family appeared normal, but a fire took their home, and it took 5 of their children, or so. That's how it seemed. What this tragic accident unfolded is a tale filled with mysterious warnings, missing evidence, and a family that would not give up to find out the truth.
George and Jenny Sauter and their 9 children were asleep when a fire started around 1 a.m. George, Jenny, and 4 children, Sylvia, Marion, John, and George Jr. Once outside, they realized 5 children were still inside: Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty. All these kids shared 2 bedrooms upstairs. George ran back into the house to save them, but the staircase was already on fire. When he went to go get his ladder, it was conveniently missing. Both of his coal trucks, which he planned to use to climb back into the house, would not start.
Marion, one of the children who escaped, ran to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, but there was no response from the operator. Like, hello, nobody home. Another neighbor also tried to call and got no response. Eventually, the fire chief, F.J. Morris, was alerted in person. He started what they call the phone tree system, where one firefighter calls the other, and so forth and so on. The fire department was only 2.5 miles away, but firefighters didn't arrive until 8 a.m. Okay, 8 a.m. Let that sink in. 7 hours after the fire started. By then, the house was kaput. Ashes. Nothing there. Investigators searched for remains of the 5 missing kids, but found nothing. They were presumed dead, unfortunately. Morris's theory was that the fire was so hot, it cremated the bodies. While the theory could be true, it's not. Bones usually remain, at least like fragments of them, after a fire. And let's not forget about ding, 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 teeth. They don't burn either. Marion later told the Raleigh Register in 1976, quote, "During the fire, I kept watching the windows, but I never saw one of the children. I never smelled burning flesh. They say you can smell burning flesh from miles away, but I never did."
A state police inspector attributed the fire to faulty wiring. Within a week, the Fayetteville coroner's office issued death certificates for the 5 children, listing the cause as fire or suffocation. How do you even list a cause of death when you have no body?
You can't.
The basement of the house remained, and George later used a bulldozer to cover it with 5 feet of dirt. His intentions were to create a memorial for his children, but all he did was ruin the evidence. Soon after, George and Jenny began to suspect their children had not died but were kidnapped, believing the fire had been deliberately set as a diversion. George had previously had the house wiring inspected by the power company earlier that fall, and it had all been deemed safe.
So, if the house was deemed safe, why was there a fire? Like, this story doesn't make sense. It's like I paid a plumber to come clean, fix my toilets, and the toilets don't work.
Right. Well, okay, so I think plumbing and electricity are definitely apples and oranges here. But, and I
Probably.
think that, you know, a fire could still start even if it was recently inspected. However, you know, I just feel like we don't know.
Also, let me take this back, because my grandma was born in 1918, y'all. Okay, she's no longer with us, rest her soul. But she kept, and my mom still has, like, I was gonna say fire hydrants. Not fire hydrants, y'all. She has hair dryers and things from her, and they're the 2-prong, and I'm too scared to use them because the electrical currents and things back in the days, I don't think they were like calculated as they are now, or however you would explain it. Like, you put one of those 2 prongs in there, you don't have a ground wire, like, the whole house goes kaput. It starts burning within the wall, right? Like, that's what happens. Like, you don't see the smoke, you just all of a sudden smell it.
I'm dumber than doornail. I don't know.
Well, you know, if the doornail fits, better wear it. Anyways, so was the fire just a tragic accident, or was it the result of something more sinister, planned by someone with a grudge against Father George? The strange events leading up to the fire make it hard to ignore that something was terribly off that night. George Sauter, born Giorgio Sodder, emigrated from Italy. Fayetteville had a small Italian immigrant community, a community where George was very vocal, especially about his hatred for Mussolini, and sparked many debates. George's silence about why he left Italy also made the town start rumors about ties to shady business deals, if you know what I mean. Many believe this could have led to the kidnapping of his children. One ridiculous event that helps this theory happened the fall before the fire. A life insurance salesman went to the house, and George refused to buy what the guy was selling, aka life insurance policies. The man was enraged and yelled at George, "Your goddamn house is going up in smoke and your children are going to be destroyed. You're going to be paid for the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini." End quote.
And imagine being that fired up and caring about what someone says about Mussolini. Like, imagine.
That's like,
Who cares?
I was watching this one thing that you sent me where it's like Australians making fun of us Americans about how, well, un-American particularly, about how she's like sitting there and calling like President Trump daddy, and they're like, she's got daddy issues. Like,
he is not going to be the 47th president. I don't know what he's going to be, but he's not going to be the president. He can still be your daddy, though. Okay? Your daddy will always love you.
why are these people so fired up? Like, it's not like they're coming in our house and like, you know, like banging down our doors. Yes, it's something to be concerned about, of course, and to be active about what you believe, but like to just yell at somebody that has a belief different than you, like, we're in America. Free speech. Okay? Free speech.
Right. Completely agree. Like, I just don't understand why you get so fired up over not liking Mussolini. Like,
And you're not even in Italy anymore.
you're not in Italy.
America.
Like, you're
Like,
yeah, you've immigrated to a whole
like,
different country.
who's your
Like, who
president
cares?
now, bitch? Who's your president now?
Who's your daddy now?
Yeah.
Oh God, I wish I could remember what he said when I was watching a Danny video. Sorry, Danny, and he was like,
Daddy's gonna walk you through it.
Stop. We don't need to be knowing what you watch behind closed doors.
I actually think I sent it to you.
Probably.
Anyway, in the days leading up to the fire, 2 of the surviving Sodder sons saw a man watching the younger children as they came home from school on Highway 21. On the night of the fire at around 12:30 in the morning, the phone rang, and Jenny, the mother, got up to answer it. She noticed that the lights were still on downstairs, and as she was falling back asleep, she heard a loud bang on the roof, followed by the sound of something rolling. An hour later, she woke up to the smell of smoke. The fact that the lights were on is significant. If the fire had been caused by faulty wiring, as suggested, there wouldn't have been any power to the house, meaning the lights shouldn't have been working. Jenny noticed the lights were on before the fire, and witnesses later confirmed they stayed on even as the house burned. Weird. Neighbors reported seeing a man stealing a block and tackle from the Sauter property around the time of the fire. So, block and tackle. Molly and I had no idea what that was. We thought it was like an engine or something to the cars.
It is not.
It's not. It's like a pulley system. So, George Sauter he did something with coal trucks. He had coal. So the block and tackle is like a pulley system, and it probably allowed him to put the coal in his truck, like pulley it on.
Or to work on his trucks.
Or to work on his trucks. It assists you in lifting like the engines out. It's not a part of the car.
No. It's an assistant.
Right. A pulley system of sorts. So anywho, the man who was stealing the block and tackle was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and he had claimed that he had cut the phone line, mistakenly thinking it was a power line, which is weird. Very weird. Why are you cutting any lines at all? However, he denied any involvement in the fire. And strangely, no official record of this suspect exists, and his motive for cutting the utility lines remains unknown.
Okay. I just thought of this theory because of what I said earlier, that if it is faulty wiring back in those days, it was probably going to be in between the walls. And houses were built very differently back then. So it is 100% plausible that they left the lights on and that the lights actually caused said fire. Especially because old dude, Mr. Block and Tackle Stealer, didn't cut the power line. He cut the phone line. So that's my theory. It's like that's what happened, is that they accidentally left the lights on and it caused a fire.
So you don't think they were attacked by Mussolini lovers?
I know Mussolini, like everybody loved Mussolini, right? Wink, wink.
I have no idea.
But let's just say that back in the day, like these things happen, and it's not that somebody couldn't have assisted in it happening, but if it is just of natural causes, it would make sense that the lights were on.
But okay, so even if the fire was accidental, like it started because of faulty wiring, like the coroner said, which is right, yes. Even if it did start accidentally, where did they go? Where are these kids? Why aren't they in the house?
I didn't say I had a theory about that. I just said that if they left the lights on, it could have sparked a fire, and maybe somebody did take the kids, and that's what that thump was. But then the house just happened to go up in flames. Instead of waking up to not find your kids, you woke up to fire, not finding your kids.
I mean, it's
possible,
possible,
but it could be two different
I took the
things.
bang to mean they threw something at the house and it landed on the roof and it rolled down. Like a bomb, like a napalm bomb.
Like a Santa Claus.
Krampus.
Plop, plop,
He
plop,
put
plop.
the kids in his sack.
Right where they started at, so it's fine. Anyways, after the fire, the family visited the memorial. Remember George leveled the house, left the crime scene to be mudded over, and made it a memorial. Well, Sylvia found a hard rubber object in the yard. Jenny thought it could have caused a loud bang that night, and George thought the object was a napalm bomb, which they called a pineapple back in those days, when they used them in the war. My question is, hard rubber object, would it really make that much of a noise? But, I don't know. I wasn't alive back then.
Well, I know that when they throw liquor bottles on your roof, it definitely makes a noise.
Oh boy. We'll get into that story another day.
It also makes a big fat noise when it comes through your kitchen windows.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how I know.
With all these weird events and beliefs that the fire couldn't have fully burned her children's bones to ash, Jenny, the mother, burned all kinds of types of animal bones and found remnants every single time. She probably also found teeth because, y'all, we know as, crime junkies that teeth do not burn. You feed dead people to pigs to get rid of all the evidence. Duh. Anyways, so Jenny then went to a crematorium worker, explains what was going on, and the crematorium worker explained that bones survive even when people are cremated at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Far hotter than the Sauter fire would have burned. And the home also only burned really for about a total of 45 minutes. The fact that household appliances were left shows that not everything even turned to ash. So the likelihood of finding some kind of remains of her children would have been there, had they been there.
Furthering the speculation as to what happened to these kids, there were several reported sightings of them. A woman claims she saw the children in a car driving by as the fire was burning. Later, yes,
I was just going to say, what kind of goes with my theory that somebody had taken the kids and the fire just happened to start. Just saying. My theory's probably right, because I'm always right.
But the insurance salesman literally threatened a fire. He was like, your house is going to burn, and your kids are going to be destroyed.
Okay, but how many times a day do I tell you that I want to kick children, and I don't?
I don't think those correlate at all, because, just telling George that your house is going to start on fire and your kids are going to disappear, those are pretty specific. If
you're right
to me that my house is going to burn down and my children are going to be destroyed, and then my house burned down and my children were destroyed, you would be, no matter.
No, I wouldn't. I'm your best friend.
You know what? Patsy and John turned on Fleet White. So, well, I just think that, it's just, the threat is too coincidental, too close to what actually happened for it to not be related. And there's also another coincidence later on in the story.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it later on.
There's
a
also
lot
think
more
that it meshes. Okay, anyway. So, another layer to the mystery is people said that they were seeing these kids. So the first sighting is that while the house is burning, a woman claimed to have seen the children in a car as the house burned. Later, 50 miles west of Fayetteville, another woman at a truck stop told police she had seen the children the very next morning, saying, quote, I served them breakfast. At a hotel in nearby Charleston, another woman reported seeing 4 of the 5 missing children about a week after the fire. She told police, and quote, the children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian descent. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared hostile and wouldn't allow me to speak with them. I sensed I was being frozen out, and I said nothing more, end quote. Years later, George saw a photo in a New York City newspaper of school children, and one resembled his missing daughter, Betty. He drove to New York to investigate, but when he found the child's parents, they refused to speak with him.
So I do find it weird that, out of the 5 children, supposedly they only saw 4, with 2 men and 2 women, which means they could have gotten rid of one of them, sold them off, dropped them off somewhere, who knows. But it's very specific that she said Italian descent because of all the issues with the community that, they were in and all of that. So that kind of says that, the kids probably were taken.
Well, it is suspicious that, the woman in Charleston would know to say that they were with Italian people, like these are Italian immigrants. So how does she know to say that they were with Italian men and women?
But who knows what they put in the news?
I mean, I guess that's true.
You know what I mean?
And I also, I don't necessarily find it all that strange that the couple in New York didn't allow George to speak with them because maybe they thought he was just a freak.
I mean, I probably would if some guy came knocking on my doors thinking that my kid was
I feel
his.
like that could easily be explained with, this dude's a loony bin.
Yeah, and this is my daughter that I gave birth to, and you need to leave because you're scaring me.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Or that, if she had been adopted, like they dropped her off at an orphanage, then they, of course, wouldn't want to speak with her either. And then if you called the police, they would be like, this crazy man came up and is trying to take my daughter, and we don't know who he is or, anything like that. So, and his name wouldn't be on any of the orphanage papers or anything because of how everything went down. So he will never know. Now, 2 years after the fire, this is 1947 now, George and Jenny tried to get the FBI to help because they had offered previously. But the Fayetteville Police and Fire Department turned around and said they didn't want help with the case. They're doing such a stellar job. The family turned to a private investigator named C.C. Tinsley because the police were obviously slacking, or that's what the family felt. Tinsley found that a member of the coroner's jury was the same life insurance guy who had originally threatened George. And remember, this is super sus because the coroner's office had ruled the fire accidental and that the kids were deceased without any remnants of any body parts, not even a slight bit of bone.
Right. And just the fact that this guy, was the same man that was selling life insurance and made this threat to George is now on the coroner's jury, concluding that the fire was an accident and that the children died. Conflict of interest. It's weird. It's very weird. I don't understand how this man could be on this jury, contributing to these decisions in regards to this family when he threatened them and he made such a specific threat.
Right, because nowadays that's unheard of. That wouldn't have happened.
He would be dismissed and you'd have to start all the way over with us. This is crazy.
Exactly. Now, Tinsley also heard a rumor from the town's minister, don't be confessing to that guy, that the fire chief had claimed to have found a heart in the ashes and had hidden and buried it in a dynamite box. Tinsley convinced the fire chief to dig up the heart, but when it was dug up and they opened the dynamite box, it was just beef liver that had never been in a fire. Rumors spread throughout the town that Morris, aka the fire chief, admitted to planting the liver in hopes that it would convince the Sodders that their missing children had burned in the fire and that they would end their search. To me, this is all super sus right here because
that makes no sense. Why would the fire chief bury something to make the family stop looking for their kids? Why?
Also, why wouldn't they want the FBI involved? If they had already said that they would assist, they should have taken him up, unless, some of these
because this town
people
has
are
something
in
to
on
hide.
it.
This
Yes,
town had something to hide.
They didn't
like,
want this family
and then
to know the truth.
I question this fire chief's judgment and education level, because he put the heart in a box. What hearts come in a box?
Well, and why would they only find a heart? Like, if the bones burned, all the organs are going to burn too. Duh.
Well, that's true. But how are you going to have a heart in a box?
Well, okay, so a dynamite box is actually like a metal box. So it's
But I don't have one of
he
those in my
came to
chest.
Well, duh. But
So it makes no sense to have this heart in a box.
I mean, had it been a heart and they found it in said box, I would still think that something smelled fishy and somebody killed these kids, because you'd have to have cut it out of them to put it in the box from the beginning. Like, you wouldn't have just found a heart.
Point. Yeah, that's my whole point. I question his intelligence, because you can't put a heart in a box and then just be like, oh, this is the heart. This is your child's heart. Like, where did you get
With
the heart?
no ashes on it or anything. Like,
It makes
I would have
no
smeared
sense.
some ashes on it or something, like burned it a little bit, like tried to make it look legit.
But he didn't do that, because I don't know what's wrong with that guy's brain. I don't know why he would do that to begin with. Like, what are you hiding that you need to make them give up hope?
I have no idea.
In August 1949, the Sodders hired pathologist Oscar B. Hunter to excavate the dirt covering the basement and the remains of the house. He found 4 shards of human vertebrae and sent them in for analysis. They determined that the bones belonged to a person around 16 or 17, but the oldest missing child was 14. There was no evidence the bones had been exposed to fire, leading to the theory they came from the dirt George used to cover the basement for the memorial. Tinsley, the investigator, later confirmed the bone fragments had come from a cemetery. I don't know how he confirmed that, but apparently he did. In September of 1949, the bones were returned to the Sodders, and then they went missing. Following the findings, West Virginia Governor Oakey L. Patterson held a hearing in Charleston where he officially declared the Sauter case closed, telling George and Jenny their search was hopeless. George and Jenny then set up a billboard on Route 16, sharing their children's disappearance and key details of the case. The billboard remained for nearly 40 years, keeping the story alive and raising critical points, such as the faulty wiring was not the cause of the fire, there were no bones found, and law officers may have been involved in a cover-up.
Like, even the operator was in on it in this town, because operator went on break and didn't have anyone fill in for her shift.
Nope.
Like, you got one job, and that's to answer the phones and to be there when they lift the phones off of the, receivers. People in the town had their own theories, of course. Some believed the mafia was involved. Others thought the kids had been taken to Italy or sold to an orphanage. From convents in St. Louis to distant relatives in Florida, the Sodders chased every lead, and they did not give up hope. A letter came from a woman in St. Louis who said their daughter, Martha, was actually in a convent there. Someone else in Florida wrote the kids were living with Jenny's distant relatives. George investigated every single lead, but nothing. Nothing came up. Now, in 1968, a whole 23 years later, Jenny got a letter from Kentucky. Inside was a picture of a man in his mid-20s who looked like their missing son, Lewis, who at the time of the fire was 9 years old, so adding up the time, it would be about right. The man in the photo had the same eyes, curly hair, nose, and even his eyebrow was slightly tilted left, just like Lewis. On the back of the photo, it read, quote, Lewis Sauter, I love brother Frankie. Little boys A90132 or 35. George and Jenny were sure it was Lewis. They hired another private detective to go to Kentucky and investigate, and they don't say his name, but he was never heard or seen from again. Sadly, George passed away in 1969 at the age of 74, and Jenny passed away in 1989 at the age of 85. Sylvia, who was only 2 at the time of the fire, is the last surviving Sodder child. She believes her siblings did not die in that fire. Her daughter, Jenny Henthorne, told the Times West Virginian, quote, "My mom promised my grandmother she would never let this story die. That's what my brother and I are doing now." End quote.
So the search still continues with the grandchildren.
It's never gonna die because people are like us are still sharing it. So if you know anything about it, let us know and we'll figure out where to send this information to.
So what really happened to the Sauter children that Christmas Eve? Did they really perish in the flames, or were they taken in some twisted plot? Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. Their story has left an eerie, unanswered legacy that still haunts the Sauter family and anyone who hears their tale.
Thank you for joining us tonight with this episode of the Sauter Family Mystery. We have more stories brewing up and can't wait to get them out for y'all. But for now, make sure you get our notifications when we drop the latest episodes by subscribing and clicking that bell. And as always, stay curious and be mysterious. Bye.
Bye.